Good afternoon. This is Unit 5, right? I mean 6, I'm just kidding you. Take a deep breath, relax. I always like to do that joke at least one time because everyone kind of looks at you horrified. This is Unit 6, and we are delighted to be here. My name is Lynn Simons, and I'm a district court judge for the state of Nevada. And this is my second time having the honor to judge nationals, and I'm just thrilled to see you all today. What we're going to do is we're going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to turn to you and have you introduce yourself. Judge Snow?
My name is Murray Snow. I'm the Chief Judge of the Federal Court in Arizona.
And Ms. Waller?
Good afternoon. I'm Tammy Waller. I'm the Director for K-12 Social Studies and World and Native Languages at the Arizona Department of Education.
And would you please introduce yourselves?
Hello, I'm Andrew Kidd.
Hi, I'm Trinity Pangallo.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Caballero.
Hello, I'm Sarah Redden, and collectively we represent Highlands High School from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and our instructor is Ms. Megan Boyman-Hennies.
All right, so everyone take a deep breath right now. Okay, Unit 6, what challenges might face American constitutional democracy in the 21st century? Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time, and how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Please discuss, should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? And what are the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? You may begin.
Thomas Hobbes published Leviathan in 1651 during the English Civil War. Hobbes concluded that without any government at all, humans live in anarchy, where rights cannot be protected. Thus, Hobbes believes the government was necessary to preserve peace, rights, and security, to ensure a stable and satisfactory human condition, which is the composition of all essential aspects of human existence.
This panel too believes that due to the government, life has become less solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. As our condition changes, we expect the government to be adaptable and use natural rights and principles of classical republicanism to continually improve the human condition. Not only should the government be concerned with improving the condition of Americans, but the world as a whole through addressing crucial global threats to rights such as war, poverty, and violence.
Like Hobbes, John Locke emphasized the protection of rights by the government, proclaiming that natural rights are life, liberty, and property. The state of the human condition in the United States has improved overall in the enshrinement of these natural rights for individuals. However, as condition satisfaction increases, the expectations of the government increases as well.
The U.S. has triumphed in improving the human condition over time through amendments such as the 13th Amendment, the abolishment of slavery, and the 19th Amendment, the prohibition of discrimination based on sex.
Though steps have been made towards improvement, systemic issues that hinder the human condition persist. For example, the practice of redlining prevents people of color, mainly African Americans, from acquiring mortgages for homes in areas deemed of high financial risk. This impacts home ownership and public education through property taxes, creating a cyclical disservice to these communities.
The principles of natural rights, such as those defined by Locke and classical republicanism, are both critical guides for the government to maintain and improve a satisfactory human condition. Natural rights must be preserved for individuals and classical republicanism for the greater good. These were cemented by law in the Constitution. The Bill of Rights guarantees free speech, religion, press, and more, reflecting natural rights.
Over time, the government has worked to ensure the conjunction of these two ideas. Born out of the rejection of English theocracy, the separation of church and state is one of the most essential concepts in classical republicanism. Article 6 reflects this, which forbids religious tests for holding office. The state should use principles of classical republicanism and natural rights to do its best to protect everyone in an egalitarian way.
In 1640, Hobbes fled to Paris during the English Civil War, similar to refugees fleeing from conflict. According to the United Nations, there are an estimated 79.5 million forcibly displaced persons globally, also recognized as refugees. The Convention relating to the status of refugees is a UN treaty published in 1951. It defines who a refugee is, the rights of those granted asylum, and the responsibilities of the nations granting asylum. US government leaders have differed on the topic of refugee status, especially the Obama and Trump administrations. Obama admitted more refugees to be resettled. However, Trump placed several restrictions on the acceptance of refugees.
Government leaders, such as President Biden, should look further into the conditions they offer to refugees. This would allow refugees to have more rights and create stable lives for themselves within the United States. Hobbes was fortunate enough to migrate out of a conflicted state. We must recognize people today that are also fleeing to obtain a better life.
In brief, this panel agrees with Hobbes. Humans need a government to protect their rights and prevent life that is barbaric and destitute. In the United States, the government has improved the human condition by protecting rights through various amendments and acts of Congress. It must keep improving to work to resolve systemic issues through a focus on classical republicanism and natural rights. Governments must adapt to address challenges in our world, such as displacement of people, conflict, and instability, to ensure rights for all.
Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
All right, you've mentioned several aspects of both local and global challenges, and some that are reflective of both. To which international organizations do you believe the United States should belong in order to address domestic and global challenges?
I feel that the United States should be aligned with NATO and the United Nations to address global challenges, like the United Nations addressing the Okinawa violence against Okinawa women, violence against military personnel, where they finally addressed the violence that women in Okinawa faced against the military personnel being in there.
Historically, both of these organizations have actually done a lot globally. Like we mentioned, the UN also did that convention regarding refugees to make sure that all of these refugees were getting the rights that they deserved, and that these countries all had the same amount of standards and that they were aligned.
In addition to my colleagues, I think the United States should also belong to certain climate change agreements, such as the Paris Climate Agreement, because I believe that climate change will disproportionately affect groups that are already subject to be vulnerable to change. Therefore, our belonging to such organizations would gradually improve the human condition, not only domestically for Americans, but globally.
I also believe internship into things like the Geneva Convention prevents tragedy from on a mass scale, especially in war, from happening. And I also believe that is critical to our foreign relations in America.
Judge Snow?
Does the United States encourage or discourage trade with countries that are guilty of human rights violations? And please explain your response.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you can go, Sarah. Sorry.
I was just going to ask him to repeat because it cut off at the beginning.
Yeah.
Surely, should the United States encourage or discourage trade with countries that are guilty of human rights violations? And please explain your response.
So I definitely think that the United States should definitely discourage trade with countries that violate human rights conditions. However, historically, I don't believe we've done that, seeing as though we still are involved a lot with China and such with trade, and they've been historically known for violating human rights.
To add
Yes,
on to my colleague, with trade with China, I agree that we should not continue to trade with countries that have violated human rights, and China is one of them, with the genocide of the particular group in China and with the conflicts just with the group being in those concentration camps.
So for my question, In your presentation, you talk about how we should use both the natural rights philosophy and the ideas of the classical Republicans when looking at issues. What tensions might arise when addressing problems on a domestic and global scale using these two philosophies, and how do we reconcile those tensions?
Some tensions that could arise between the idea of natural rights and the theories of classical republicanism is classical republicanism focusing on somewhat of a greater good aspect, whereas natural rights kind of concern the individual. So it is kind of what we see nowadays with the conflicting ideology of what is best for oneself versus what is best for the common good or the greater good, and essentially just recognizing the social contract that people enter when they are being governed. And as for a way to reconcile that in order to push forward the human condition, it is for sure difficult, but definitely just kind of utilizing natural rights and without discounting the good of many.
So one of the pressing issues today is certainly the COVID-19 pandemic. And what policies do you believe locally or domestic and globally we should employ with regard to the pandemic and vaccinations?
I think especially towards, oh, sorry. I was getting a lot of feedback. I think especially towards the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were concerned with mask regulations. And I think that still is a large issue in terms of people. There are still a lot of people concerned about the vaccine and what symptoms it might cause, seeing as though a lot of them have been released for emergency use. And so I think that definitely we need to consider releasing more mask regulations, like make them mandatory. And once we do have more vaccines that do have, I guess, that are like Pfizer that have been released by the CDC and are like have been studied well enough that hopefully like vaccines can be mandated too.
To add on, sorry. Andrew, you can go.
I probably disagree with most of my colleagues on this one, as I think preservation of individual rights should definitely come first, and not just in America, but in the world. I think that there should be government funding for vaccines, but I don't think there should be any mandate, as I just personally believe it's a violation of human rights to force someone, not necessarily force, but have government oversight of mandating something like a vaccine passport, simply because it conflicts with several religious or personal beliefs or ideologies.
I agree with my colleague Priscilla in that there should be greater enforcement of the mask wearing, and it should not differ from state to state, because the 14th Amendment guarantees that the privileges that states enforce do not mess with individual privileges and individual rights. And I feel that the mask mandate does not provoke or mess up anyone's privileges of guaranteed rights and freedoms.
Yeah, and just as for vaccinations, I could see it becoming something, it is very hard to tell what will be mandated, as we are unsure of these vaccines will need a booster, and if so, when. And kind of looking, for example, for us to be public school students, we have to have certain vaccinations. So will the COVID vaccine become one of those necessary mandatory vaccinations, or will it be a flu vaccine? It's very difficult to tell. But I believe that in order to fight through this pandemic, that vaccinations are necessary on a mass scale.
All right, good job. So I enjoyed your presentation, and that you really focused on selecting refugees, as what needs to be addressed, and you turned it around from all perspectives. You mentioned during your cross in presentation 13th, 19th, and 14th Amendment. I also enjoyed, you provided some statistics, numerical support that I thought was valuable. Your pace was good. I would listen carefully to the questions and make sure that you pop with an answer first and then expand based on knowledge that you've already prepared. And I also would make sure that you always come from the point that you are experts talking to Congress. And so you need to alleviate words like I feel or kind of, because you're the experts in the room talking to Congress. So you need to portray that. But I enjoyed a lot of the examples you had, and also the discussion about Hobbes, fleeing to Paris. I thought that was interesting and unique. Judge Snow?
Thank you. I would agree with much of what Judge Simon said, so I won't repeat it. I would say, though, I don't know as you sat there if this occurred to you, but when Andrew disagreed with the rest of you on the mask mandate, didn't that make for a more interesting conversation? You should actually maybe even look for occasions and when you're answering questions where you can generate a little bit of a disagreement, because then as you discuss things among yourselves, you really do indicate well-roundedness and a broader base on issues. Let me offer a thought. Is there really no other side to the China question? Andrew, did you really not want to come forward and say, maybe there's a reason we should trade with China? I'm just kind of throwing that out there. It would have made for a more stimulating answer on that question too, than just having everybody agree. You're a bright group. You're engaged. Every one of you is a good presenter, and I enjoyed the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
I echo my panel judges. I really did enjoy when you had that little bit of disagreement, because it really showed the tension between the two ideas. It illustrated it really beautifully. I thought you did a great job, and I like the fact that you bring in some unique examples. This is the first time we've heard about refugees, and I love how you tied it into that little Thomas Hobbes quote or little factoid. But I think you guys did a really nice job, and you should be very proud of yourself. And I learned a lot from your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck for the rest of today and tomorrow. And I really appreciate you taking time to spend with us.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you for your